affect the people of this country rather than who and who is not, who is corrupt and who is not, because frankly, the whole establishment is, and it's really a matter of who you pick at any one point in time.
Shireen, are you all corrupt?
Please don't use this word because nobody has proved us to. Corruption means to have kickbacks, to make money out of the project, misusing the position. Till now, in all reports, definitely the money trail is being, it's not clear. So the court and the judges and the honorable judges are every day, you see in the findings that they are looking at the money trail. So corruption, it is, please don't use this word. And I must tell you one thing which another analyst was saying. I do agree, I believe in a strong opposition, because everyone, I do believe that Mr. Khan is in real rush to have the power. And I am also happy about the accountability process genuinely starting in Pakistan.
Okay, that's
being
okay.
from the government party, I also am happy about it.
Okay,
but the justice will be done, I believe.
Okay, good. May I ask you to pick up on a point that was made a minute ago? What's a bigger threat to you, ma'am? Is the bigger threat Imran Khan gaining political momentum out of this, or that the army might decide there's too much instability, too many scandals, we're going to do what we did to Nawaz Sharif in 1999, and we're going to come in and we're going to conduct another coup d'etat to restore order in the country?
99 position and today's position is very different, because after the amendments in the constitution and the army today, I feel that they are not interested to interfere in these affairs. The courts are enough. They know that courts are supreme and they are very, very independent. Not ever it was like this. Our courts are now this time very independent, and they are not under army or any influence. And I feel the threat is, I know, you know what, why a Prime Minister is confident, it's only his, the people he feels that wherever election takes place in the country since last 4 years, PMLN is always, it's the victory party. So I feel that the confidence level in the government is their people, that they feel
so
the people are with us.
Sure.
The day they feel, yeah, I'm very confident.
Yeah, you're still confident, you feel you have support. Harun, you know, Harun, you're involved as an expert in you know, China and Pakistan, you know, coming together. They have economic initiatives. This is worth billions and billions of dollars, right? With that in mind, let me ask you, do you think the army would be watching this and thinking, we do not want economic and political instability in the country right now, given that there's so much development ahead, so much money to be made ahead, and we can emerge as a great power?
Definitely,
so maybe they'll step in. Harun?
Yeah, you are very right. And actually, I think that Prime Minister will also be thinking, even if some decision comes against him, he has the majority in the parliament. Some other parliamentarian from the same ruling party can be nominated as Prime Minister as well. So stability would be there, and China-Pakistan economic corridor will also be continuing. And I think that army or establishment in current scenario are not going to be that much openly involved in all those things, keeping in view the background and the political parties, particularly the mainstream political parties, Pakistan People's Party and PMLN, are mature enough. And do you remember Jamaat-e-Islami Pakistan that had the chance to do a much more bigger protests against the governments in the history? They are also now adopting the legal way, and they are going to the courts. And by the way, it was the Jamaat-e-Islami that initiated this process in the Supreme Court of Pakistan. And Imran Khan of PTI at that time was on roads and was, in my opinion, he got nothing from the roads. But many of his serious supporters were disappointed from that sort of behavior.
It's being called the biggest criminal conviction in Brazil's history. Lula da Silva, the charismatic president who brought the country out of massive debt, is set to go to jail over corruption and money laundering. A court last week sentenced Lula to 9.5 years in prison. He's the most prominent figure to be ensnared in a corruption probe that put a number of ministers in jail and cost his protege, Dilma Rousseff, the presidency. In fact, Lula's sentencing could have such a severe political impact across the country, the judge in the case ruled he should remain free on appeal. I spoke with his lawyer, Valeska Martins.
Because this is an outrageous decision. It is this whole process should not have started. We have taken it to the UN. There's no news here. We knew Moro was going to convict Lula. It has been a biased procedure since the start. Now the interesting thing is. Judge Moro completely ignores all of the evidence of innocence that we have produced in the files. Again, 73 witnesses have cleared Lula. We have produced enough evidence, documents that prove overwhelmingly that the apartment that he's charged with having received from OAS was never Lula's, could not have been Lula's, unless he paid for it, unless he purchased it. So the fact that he has a sentence with 962 paragraphs, and only in 5 of those paragraphs he mentions the line of defense or the documents of Lula's innocence is somehow troubling to the rule of law in Brazil.
Yeah, okay, so you feel there's an unfair judgment made by Judge Sergio Moro. I guess you're implying he's the corrupt one. He's the one that should be on trial. Let me pose this to you then. Number one, he's saying Lula should be free on appeal, right? He says he should be free on appeal, so he doesn't want to put him in jail because he understands the gravity of the situation. Number two, looking at some of the evidence, prosecutors had also alleged that OAS paid to store Lula's belongings. Judge Sergio Moro dismissed that part of the case. He said there wasn't enough evidence there. That doesn't sound like a judge who wants to throw the book at Lula. It sounds like a judge who's weighing the evidence, doesn't it?
No, first of all, I'm not saying Judge Moro is corrupt. Absolutely not. We have, of course, said that he has abused authority. We have said that he violated basic human rights, not only Lula's, but Lula and his family, his collaborators, his attorneys even. That is what we accuse him of. And we also accuse him of not being independent or impartial, which we believe has presented itself. The fact that he takes 104 paragraphs of the sentence to defend himself and trying to show that he's impartial, that he's independent, and to attack the defense simply for appealing whenever the violations occur in the procedures, already say and state quite prove that that this whole procedure was politically biased,
but Valeska,
was politically motivated.
Sorry to interrupt you.
The fact that he says
certainly, and you made the point, right? So sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. And now, in a vacuum, this sounds really reasonable. But given that this corruption probe has ensnared politicians on all sides of the fence, I mean, even the President Temer has been investigated for corruption. From the outside looking in, it seems as if no politician is above the law. Brazil is cleaning up its rotten politics. That's what it looks like. It's not as if Lula's just been targeted.
Well, again, emphasis, and you're absolutely right, it seems that Brazil is cleaning out corrupt politicians. And let me point out that yesterday, Moro, in his own decision from our motion to clarify, has clearly stated that he never said, that he did not say in his sentence, that Lula had any involvement in any wrongdoing from Petrobras. So only that would remove him from the case and already clear Lula of this massive, what he calls, and we of course have some doubt, of this massive corruption scandal.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo says political groups like Hizbut Tahrir should not operate in his country. Not because its members committed treason or an act of violence or broke any law of any kind. Instead, Widodo says Hizbut Tahrir's vision of an Islamic caliphate threatens Indonesian unity. Well, Human Rights Watch says that's not Widodo's call to make, and that he should respect freedom of speech, no matter the ideological perspective. Natalie Perhonen reports.
Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim nation. Its constitution enshrines religious tolerance, but the Indonesian government is under fire after the president, Joko Widodo, issued a decree to allow authorities to ban groups, including religious ones, which pose a threat to the state's secular ideology of Pancasila. The Security Affairs Minister, Wiranto, says,
"This decree is not intended to discredit Islamic organizations or the majority Muslim population of Indonesia."
The major religious group in the firing line is Hizbut Tahrir. The Indonesian branch is not listed as a terrorist group. It's considered non-violent. It has long called for the establishment of Islamic law and a caliphate in Indonesia. The government announced its intentions to ban the group in May. A spokeswoman for Hizbut Tahrir, Ifa Nur, said,
"Every citizen had the right to organize, and HTI was just delivering Islamic teaching."
Supporters and rights groups have both condemned this month's decree. But government backers see it as a countermove to the rising influence of hardline Muslim groups after worsening sectarianism, which was on show during the gubernatorial race in Jakarta. The incumbent Christian governor, Basuki Cahayapurnama, also known as Ahok, was put on trial for blasphemy during the campaign. Mass rallies to protest against Ahok were organised by the previously fringe group Islamic Defenders Front. Supporters of Hizbut Tahrir also took part. Ahok lost that race, was convicted and is now serving a 2-year jail term. The government says it wants to protect national unity, but will this latest move lead to further religious polarisation? And what effect could it have on Jokowi himself in the 2019 presidential elections? Natalie Pohonen, The Newsmakers.
Does the Indonesian government have the right to crack down on groups like Hizbut Tahrir? I spoke with international relations expert Afzal Ashraf and the spokesman for Hizbut Tahrir in Indonesia.
I think the government is right to try and crack down, although I don't think the way they're doing it is right. I think it'll lead to further problems. What we have here in Hizbut Tahrir is an organization which is political in nature, which has been inspired by modern political religions. It's a term that the philosopher Vogelin gave to the modern movements, ideological movements, that have decided to replace political systems, and they range from communism to fascism to this form of so-called Islamism. And when you look at their ideology in detail, you see that Islam is just a facade that they have adapted for political purposes. Right. And that's very clearly borne out by one of the answers you've been given.
Sure. But Mr. Ashraf,
I can explain that.
Certainly. Yeah. Mr. Ashraf, allow me to come in here. How is it different to somebody having a socialist party and saying, I want a proletarian revolution and I want to upend a secular democracy, I want to bring about a Marxist revolution? If they're not doing any violence right now and their end goal is something different, but they're not actually actively committing violence to subvert democracy, isn't that a bit of a conundrum?
There is a conundrum here for sure, but there is a significant difference. The difference is this, that when you have a socialist revolution or a right-wing revolution, it is purely political.